it's Brindley. Happy Monday and welcome to our new time. So, I have decided to switch it up a little bit, and this is a good kind of pre-lesson to the lesson today is that you are allowed to change your mind. And I think sometimes we forget that. We feel obligated because we committed to something or we would do it or somebody's depending on us. And the truth is that we're allowed to change our minds. And so I decided to change my mind. Being chained to a computer at 7 p.m. Every Monday night just doesn't really fit my self-care schedule. So I said, you know what? I'm going to do it early. And I talked to a few of my close friends that join me every week, and they said this would be a great time. So this is our new time. And I'll be here every Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern to share topics with you. So today we're going to talk about forgiveness. This one came in from somebody that watches every week, and they actually requested it. They asked me to talk about it, and I get asked this a lot. So those of you that might be joining for the first time or don't know my story, you can go back into my video feed and early on in the videos. Own Your Story is the episode, and that is my story. You can also listen to the One Thing podcast, episode 78. Episode 78, my good friend Jeff Woods interviewed me, and that's my story as well. So just to kind of give you the nitty gritty is, I made a really big mess up in life, a really big one. And I was facing a lot of time in jail, in prison specifically. I was facing a lot of community service, $40,000 in fines, 15 to life in prison, just a lot going on. And I had done a pretty bad thing. And a lot of people ask me, Bryn, how did you forgive yourself? Right? There's tons of people that come back from seemingly hopeless places of things that were completely beyond their control, right? People, I had a friend this week, a very close family friend, pass away from cancer. And, that's a really hard thing. She couldn't control it. And now her family is having to deal with that situation. But what I did was of my own doing. And so sometimes when it's our fault, it makes it even harder to forgive. And so I wanted to talk a little bit today about, number one, how I forgave myself, because the truth is you truly can't forgive others until you've forgiven yourself. And in any situation in life, we have some sort of DNA in it, some type of ownership or responsibility. And so the first thing I had to do is I had to own my mistake. And those of you that know me and that have known me over my journey of the last 10 years, I didn't try to get out of it. When my attorney and I met and, to deal with the consequences of the actions, I told him, I said, I did this. I am not looking to get out of it. I am not looking for anyone to give me sympathy. I'm hoping that I don't get the worst case scenario, yet I'm guilty. And I'm ready to deal with the consequences. And what I've learned through that experience is if you always do the next right thing and you always own your mistakes, the universe, God, karma, whatever you want to call it, is going to take care of you. Everything is going to be all right. One thing I have learned is that by not owning it, by sitting in denial, by not taking responsibility for your actions, it only makes the situation worse. And so the first thing was I had to forgive myself. And the first way that I was able to forgive myself was to get vulnerable and to own the fact that I had screwed up, to tell the truth. I had to tell my truth. I had to tell myself the truth. I had to tell my family the truth. And then eventually, in order to own my story and my story not own me, I had to tell the world the truth. It's not easy to stand in front of thousands of people and say, hey, I almost killed someone. And that's something I have to live with for the rest of my life. That's not an easy truth to tell. Yet if I don't tell the truth, then I'm not able to forgive myself. So that's number one. Number two is I had to sit with the feeling. I remember hearing a woman speak during everything that had happened, and she had just gotten out of prison. This woman was driving drunk. Her best friend was in the passenger seat. They were in Key West, and she came around a bend and hit a construction zone, and she lived, her friend died. And she had just gotten out of incarceration for vehicular homicide. And she talked about the first time she got her hair done and she got her nails done for the first time, the first time she got a pedicure. And I sat and listened to this woman and I thought to myself, those are my yets. If I don't learn to forgive myself so that I can change the behavior, that's where I go next time somebody dies. And so number one is you have to tell the truth. Number two is you got to sit with the feelings, right? It doesn't feel good always. And there were days I didn't want to get out of bed. And there were days that it would have been much easier to just stay under the covers and pull the blanket over my head and just hide from the world. And I had to sit with the feeling. I had to accept it in order to then reflect on what the consequences were if I didn't change the behavior. Because first has to come telling the truth, then sitting in the feelings, so then I can determine, okay, if I make this change, what's the pain versus the pleasure? What will happen? Because forgiveness is defined as letting go. Forgiveness is not just saying something is okay. That's the point. That's the part that people struggle with, is just because you're forgiving yourself, I am by no means saying what I did is okay. It was wrong. It was terribly wrong. And there were consequences that I dealt with as a result of my actions. Yet, just because I forgive myself doesn't mean that I say it's okay. And a lot of us are afraid to forgive ourselves because we're afraid that people are going to think that we're making excuses, or we're not remorseful, or it's okay, what we did was okay. And that's not the truth. You know, the Dalai Lama said it, we can never make peace in the outer world until we make peace within ourselves. And the way that we make peace within ourselves first is by being able to let go. And the way that we are able to let go is by getting real with ourselves and owning the truth, sitting inside of the feelings, and then identifying what the pain versus pleasure is of changing our actions and letting go so that we can move forward. So a couple ways that I was able to also forgive myself that I want to just give you is, number one is sometimes it's making amends. Sometimes you have to go and you have to, there's a difference, and we've talked about, I think it was like episode 7, about the difference between an apology and an amends. An apology is I'm sorry, they're words. An amends is here's what I'm going to do to change the behavior. And asking the individual, what can I do to make it right? It is not up to us to control their forgiveness and their ability to forgive. It's our job to make sure that we change the behavior going forward. And that's what I call a silent amends. So the gentleman that crossed my path 10 years ago that I caused a lot of damage to, I've never been able to face make my amends to him. Yet I make my amends to him every day and to his family by not drinking and helping others do better in life and come back from seemingly hopeless places. So sometimes it's not about, and most of the time it's not about the other person. Again, it's about forgiving yourself so that you can move forward. So in order to forgive others, you have to forgive yourself first. So you guys have heard me say this, resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It's not going to happen. So some ways that I deal with resentment that then allows me to forgive is that I will pray for that person every day for 21 days. Don't ask me what it is about 21 days, but right about like the 19th, 20th day, this magic happens and it just corrects itself. It's unbelievable. And when I say pray, I don't care what you pray to. I always say, I don't care who your God is, as long as you don't think it's you. It can be the doorknob, it can be Mother Nature. And you're not praying this big, audacious, I want the world to be, them to win the lottery prayer. It's very simple. I pray that they will have everything I would want for myself: peace, love, happiness, and wealth. And that's it. And slowly, as you start to do that every day, what you're doing is you're replacing guilt with gratitude. You're taking your guilt away, you're taking their guilt away without them even knowing it, and you're replacing it with gratitude. You're starting to pray for them. So there is something good that comes out of everything. It's just all in how we choose to look at it. So in order to forgive others, number one, you have to forgive yourself. Number two is you have to acknowledge your feelings, right? Our feelings are valid. People hurt us. People cause a lot of damage. We're all human. We don't always show up as our best selves. And that's why grace and forgiveness is so important, and why it's important to always be honest with one another. That's the thing about me, is a lot of people don't like me because you always know where I stand. Yet integrity and ownership are two of my core values. So I have no option but to be honest. So you have to acknowledge how you're feeling, and then you have to set boundaries, right? And there's a lot of people in my world that have set boundaries to protect themselves from me. I've set boundaries to protect myself from them. Like identifying what's important to you and what your boundaries are. And then lastly, trust the process. Forgiveness is a process. I did not go from feeling completely guilty, shameful, not wanting to get out of bed in the morning to full forgiveness and loving myself overnight. First, I had to allow people in my life to love me when I couldn't love myself. And I borrowed their love. I borrowed their confidence. And those are the people that today are still in my life that have known me along my whole journey that I can call and say, hey, I'm feeling guilty today. I'm feeling shameful. I'm feeling imposter syndrome. I'm feeling all these things. And they're the ones that will remind me of what the process has been. So trust the process. Maya Angelou, who's one of my all time, I mean, that woman, there's nothing that she says that doesn't resonate, says, self acceptance. It's one of the greatest gifts that you can give yourself to forgive everybody. And sometimes forgiveness is not justification. We don't always get the justification, and that's what we have to let go of. We have to let go of the fact that justification isn't what's important. It's being free, it's being at peace, it's being centered that's most important. Because the only thing that cannot be created nor destroyed is energy. And what energy do you want to put out to the universe? Do you want to put out resentful, ugly, that type of energy? Or do you want to put out forgiveness and grace and know that we're all human and everybody is just doing the best that they can with what they have? So I hope this was helpful. If you want to talk more about forgiveness, just reach out to me, DM me, private message me. And other than that, we'll see you at 5 o'clock Eastern next Monday. Bye, guys.